Welcome to Corporate School Dropout Podcast, a podcast dedicated to sharing the inspiring stories from people who have ditched the 9-to-5. A corporate school dropout is someone who wanted off the corporate ladder, who favors island time over island screensavers, and believes there's more to life than hating what you do Monday through Friday. Join your host, Lauren Allen, as she interviews dropouts each week to help you get inspired and motivated to make a change in your life.
Hi there. Welcome to the Corporate School Dropout Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Allen, and I am so happy you're here. Today, I'm talking with Matt Warzel of MJW Careers. Thank you so much for joining me today, Matt.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Matt and I have talked a few times, and we have postponed this a few times, and we are finally recording, which is awesome. So I can't wait to hear your story. So why don't we start with your career? Give us an overview of what you were doing in corporate world.
Excellent. Yeah. So prior to my, entrepreneurial adventure, I was a HR recruiter. Actually did about a year of sales prior to that, because right out of school as a business major that graduated with a marketing degree, I was like, I don't know what to do. And so I wanted to be, the first goal was I was going to be the ad writer. I was going to make the Bud Light commercials, because everybody's like, who doesn't want to make commercials all day and get paid for people to say your slogan for that month? So I put together a portfolio, and I was just interviewing like crazy, trying to get a job in advertising, and realized, well, it's not an easy nut to crack. And I'll say this, because I have two career paths. I have one that I do during the day, which is my resume writing, career coaching. And then at night, I do entertainment, like acting and make movies. So having said that, advertising was a no-go. I decided I'm going to put all my eggs into the bucket of entertainment. So I'm going to start writing screenplays. And meanwhile, my regular work went from a paper salesman, which was awesome, into a week-long mortgage venture, which was even better after I realized the mortgage industry was, who has a pulse that can stick around for a while. And then I was sitting there kind of going, okay, well, that didn't work out. So, just kept serving tables like I did in college. And a friend of mine approached me and said, hey, do you want to interview for this company I'm working at called Aerotech? They're a recruiting firm. I go, what's that? What's recruiting? And they're like, we find people jobs. I was like, all right, whatever. And so I got on the interview, and the guy goes, and I looked up, I didn't even look up the information about the company. I'm 23, 22, whatever. Of course, we're just have bad habits. And so I go in the interview room, and the guy goes, tell me about Aerotech. And I go, you guys do like technology stuff, right? Like communications. He goes, did you spell it with a K or a CH? I go, I think it's CH. He's like, yep, it's a K. We're a recruiting firm. I go, oh, okay. Like I totally BS my way through that. And and anybody in the audience who knows the industry, Aerotech's really well respected. They're the owner who started it, Steve Bisciotti, who owns the Ravens, and that's how he made his money. And so I go on the interview, and it's like, a group freaking 8-hour long interview. All day I was there, like maybe not 8, probably like 5 or 6. But anyway, I interviewed through all these people, and I really realized, wow, this company like really takes like business serious. Like I guess up until then I was with like the paper sales and mortgage, where it was just kind of like flash in the pan type work. And all of a sudden I'm like, this is kind of cool. So I'm so glad I actually got hired and worked there for about 2.5 years. Man, I built my business acumen. I had no idea the difference, how I was prior to Aerotech and then after, just how much more I carried myself more professionally and whatever. From there, I got a little burned out doing staffing. Staffing's a different beast altogether in terms of the recruiting world. And I wanted to get in HR, because I just was like, I just saw some friends and colleagues, and they were getting paid more. It seemed like they were doing less. And I was like, this makes sense. This is perfect for me. And so I got into HR. I luckily got into Goodrich Landing Gear in Cleveland, Ohio, doing a year-long contract work. And I parlayed that into another contract and do another, couple big firms, distribution side things. I was in finance, aerospace, manufacturing, production. I was all over the board with these recruiting jobs. I wanted to pursue the acting thing still, because remember, at night, I'm still writing screenplays, doing improvising stuff and acting classes and stand-up comedy and all this stuff. And so we wanted to go to LA, because we were going to be, they were waiting for us. They were all the people in LA were like, get out here. We have all these movies for you to be in. And I was like, yep. So, and of course that's a joke. So I started applying to Los Angeles recruiting jobs. And I mean, we're talking like 6 months ahead of time, because you got to do that. If anybody in the audience wants to know, when should I start looking for work? Now. Got an interview requests for BP in Long Beach and then Johnson Controls in Whittier, California, which is south side of LA. I managed to get them at the same time because I was out there interviewing for BP on site. They paid me to come out to interview. And Johnson Controls happened to they wanted me to come in because I told them I was going to be in town, and I ended up missing the call because I was looking for an apartment. We kind of made this like a catch-all trip to just like essentially get established to relocate. And they still were like, it's okay, we'll just go off the interview call. You're cool, we'll hire you. And I was like, oh, snap. So again, another fumbling thing I did, but they didn't even care because I guess I had the good credentials, and it worked because I parlayed that into a negotiation. So I managed to I turned down BP and they hated me for it, but Johnson Controls, I managed to get like $5,000 more and a relocation package. And so I headed out west, and me and my wife were out there, and she was doing hair and makeup. I was doing acting, and that was at night. And during the day, she was technical writing for a dollar store, whatever, Dollar Tree, one of those corporate, but the corporate area. And I was recruiting at day. And then flash forward, whatever, 2.5 years, meltdown hit, 2008 meltdown. And that was when I cut ties with the corporate world. I was out of work, recruiting jobs were expendable. No one was hiring. I didn't want to go and do contract recruiting work, or at least try to find more of that, because I realized it was just few and far between opportunities at that time in the economy. So I said, I'm just going to parlay my unemployment. At that time, it was called 99 weekers, where we got 99 weeks of unemployment, which was such a blessing. And so I managed, in those 2 years of unemployment collecting, I managed to kind of but start this business I do now, which, now we're 11 years, whatever, 12 years. So it was the most circumstantial way of getting into entrepreneurship. Was an 2008 meltdown, where I was just bad mouthing the president. I'm all upset. I can't believe we're losing our jobs and all this stuff. And then now I look back, I go, that was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Wow.
And we're done. Well, I'm out of here. I got to go.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea the move to LA, and I had no idea that you wrote screenplays or acting on the side. Like, that's too funny. Maybe I would have figured all that out if we had like postponed all of our conversations like multiple times, because life was getting in our way.
Did you spell Warzel with an E? That's probably why. There's another Matt Warzel. No, I'm just kidding.
I need to look up your, was it IMDb,
yeah.
IMDb.
Yeah, I'm out there.
Awesome. I'll include that in the show notes. Maybe that'll be interesting. No, that's crazy. Well, I lost my job in 2008, as a lot of other people did, but I was also very young, wasn't wise to the world, and just was looking everywhere for a new job, because that's what I did. I was still following a societal norm. I was just still doing the things that I was told that I was supposed to do. Okay, you got laid off. You need to find a job. You need to do this, 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 and this. And it took me about 6 months. Stayed in corporate world for another, I don't know. Oh, I do know, because I know when I quit again. Stayed in the corporate world for another 9 years. Looking back, I mean, there's nothing I can say now. I can't redo the 2008 crash, and I can't redo what happened to me during that unemployment. No, I just didn't know what I know now. And so it's really cool that you started early. Like, you didn't do what I did and say, I've got to go find another job. Like, that's amazing. So how did the 2008 crash, you started your business, you're now in business for 11 years, but how did you get started? So how did that all come about?
Yes, sure. So essentially, at first it was just cheap resumes for anyone that I could get, sell it to. So I kind of did my research, and I did the fundamentals of setting up the legal side of things and the tax stuff and all that kind of daunting things that really isn't as bad once you start kind of diving in and unfolding what you need. I mean, I still was learning legal stuff 5 years in, where I was like, I never had that form. I better get that going. There's things you'll figure out as you're an entrepreneur, but that biggest thing was just researching the right things to do when you start a business, like the website, the social, legal, whatever, finance. And then from there, start honing in on how am I going to get in people's faces now. So then you start kind of the content stuff and the marketing, and that kind of is today is still the bulk of what I do all day. So, I guess the starting out wasn't as daunting because I had the unemployment to fall back on, knowing there was a little bit of, it wasn't like a lot, but it was just consistent enough where I could at least not have to worry about the next role just yet. And bear in mind, knowing that this might not go to fruition. So I was still like possibly had to go back to corporate. So I just didn't know quite yet, but it was almost like, year one, nothing. Year two, maybe like $1,200 I think I made or something. And then it was like, then all of a sudden year three, you start getting a little bit more money. And I thought, if I can make just this much per week, I could probably do this full time and still get, paid what I would get paid if I had to go back to corporate America. So that kind of number, so to speak, I kept hitting it as I kept, growing. So it just kind of all made sense that this was what I was going to do. And I think it was funny when I first started doing it, though, my friends would all be like, oh, you're unemployed, because no one really bought into this whole idea of starting your own company thing. So like people were, just thinking like, oh, you're, unemployed still or something. And I'm like, I'm self-employed, but like, even then I didn't really buy it yet. And then it probably didn't even hit me maybe until maybe like 6 years ago or something, where I realized I'll never go back to corporate. There was that moment where it was just like, I'll fight tooth and nail to keep maintaining this kind of freedom, if you will, even though you're still bogged down, by a lot of things, because you're handling a lot more stuff. But it's nice to be able to just be my own boss and control my schedule as much as I can, and knowing that, yeah, I will have right things in place to make sure I can kind of sustain this type of livelihood without having to try to, and not to say going back to corporate's not bad. I mean, not for everybody, or entrepreneurship's not for everybody. I can't go back to that type of structure. Come to that conclusion.
I always say that I'm a terrible employee. I was a terrible employee anyway. I remember I was a executive assistant to a president, CEO of a company, and he was, I need you to book these flights. Look at my schedule, da, 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 da. And I said, you look at your schedule. Like, pretty sure you're an adult.
He's like, this doesn't make sense. No one ever said that. What do I say?
I can laugh about it now, but I remember, like, that was my job. Really, it was. It's like, you can look at your schedule and you can figure out when you can fly. Like, that's ridiculous. So anyway, his wife always told me that I was her favorite.
Oh, that's cool. Because you probably gave him more, what?
Yeah, one time he told me that he's like, I never know if when you say, sure, if that means, yeah, I'll take care of that, or you're a dumbass. Like, do it yourself.
It probably rubbed off at home with her, and so he hated you worse. He's like, you got my wife talking back now.
He loves me. He still loves me. I could call him today and we could shoot the shit.
That's cool.
But yeah, I remember I never really told that story before, especially on the podcast. I think about that. And that wasn't my only like worst employee position or story, but I'll never forget that, of telling, the president, CEO of a huge business, do it yourself. Yeah.
It's so funny, the workforce, just the stuff people. I once had I was recruiting, and the one guy was sleeping in like the machines at Ford, like during his shift. They're like, you got to fire this guy. He's been sleeping in the machines. I'm like, how does he even figure out which machine to sleep in? It's just, the workforce is so funny. There's so many good stories out there.
One of the things that we talked about right before you hopped on, or before we hopped on and got started, was your business name, MJW Careers. Let's talk about how you came up with your business name.
That was because at first it was me and my wife were going to do this together. That we were linking arms. She's Jamie, I'm Matt, and so it was. My last name's Warzel, and then I kind of was looking at all these, like I was saying earlier about, what are these respectable companies? What do they all sound like? And they're all acronyms, or they're all like Johnson, Warzel, and Johnson. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to have a bunch of last names because it's just me and my wife. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just do the acronym thing. And so, that's my executive appeal. It's MJW. This guy clearly works with executives. And now I told her even this past year, I go, God, I wish I could rebrand and just like make it like marshmallow resumes. Everybody's like fun now. Everything's flowy. And like, I like that, like kind of bubbly, kind of fun stuff for a company. Like I wish I could have like a fun motto and all this thing. But it's like, I look at my name out there now and it's just spread MJW everywhere. I wouldn't even know if I'd have the bandwidth to recreate as a solopreneur, as someone who's like a gig economist. It's just, rebranding is pretty daunting right now. So I'm not going to do it. I've added a new character to my marketing scheme kind of thing, my strategy, if you will, for my newsletter. So I just created this cartoon character this week, Job the Job Sticker, for my blog Job Stickers. And that was kind of fun. So I'm going to kind of play that for a little bit, but I'm never going to change my name. So it's always going to be like this, like appeal of like influence, MJW, influencing by the millions, or like, even though I have like no followers, but like, well, no, I have 9,000 LinkedIn followers. So if you need some high level thinking, you know where to go. Just look at the acronym based companies.
When I first got started, I wanted to use all of names, as you said, like the acronyms. And, my family names are Alan, Hyde, and Miles. And I thought I was going to, I would branch off and I had people working under, my consulting company. So, was I going to be the Hyde, Allen, Miles consulting group or the Miles consulting group? And I started like playing off all these names and I was telling my mom and she was, that doesn't sound like you and that doesn't sound right. I was like, oh, but I'm gonna, I might have people working under me at one point. So I need to be a group or I need to be consulting. And I was trying to come up with all of these things when on day one, I needed a way for people to pay me to deliver my services and to pay my taxes. Like that's really it on day one. And it's so crazy that we put all this pressure on ourselves to come up with this incredible name because that name is going to attract all of the clients. They're just going to flow in once they hear that name.
Oh yeah.
And
group. There's not just one. She's got so many resources. We got to get there quick.
I know. It's so funny. And I can only laugh about it now because I was so serious and I was dead set on this crazy name with all my family names. And my mom's like, that doesn't sound right. And now I'm Corporate School Dropout.
Yeah, see, I like that though. It's catchy.
It is. And it only started because I called myself a Corporate School Dropout. I thought it was funny. Like you were talking about, like you just like marshmallow careers or marshmallow resumes or whatever. And I just thought it was funny. And I just started calling myself a Corporate School Dropout. And my parents didn't think it was funny, but I did. Lo and behold, a year and a half later, it became it became my podcast. And then a year and a half later, after the podcast has started, it's now like my full time. I've moved all of my business, closed down all the other crazy names, and do everything under Corporate School Dropout.
That's great. Easier for branding. You don't have to spread yourself so thin with all the channels. And just make it one marketing flow into this and build the audience way bigger than trying to, this, like we do like a subservice thing under the Corporate School Dropout. You're going to have to go to this page for that. It's like, oh,
I did.
God. I know you
totally did all of that. I totally did. And I had a friend say, I don't understand. Like you work with women who want to drop out of corporate America. So why don't you why don't you rebrand everything under Corporate School Dropout? And I was like, no, I am a right-hand business coach because that was the first business I ever created. Once I gave up on all the crazy family names and the consulting and the groups. So it started right-hand business coach and it never felt aligned. I mean, I worked with a couple of clients, but once I moved over to Corporate School Dropout, moved all of the coaching, the community, the podcasts under that, it's amazing when you get aligned and you feel aligned, like people start coming to you.
Yeah, really. And it's nice because it still kind of keeps with that, newer 21st century kind of, you can be a little playful in corporate America. It doesn't have to be stiff suits and, So Corporate School Dropout, maybe, in 1985 would have had a different effect than now. I think now people are just, you see even businesses like with almost, a little bit of curse words here and there in their messaging and stuff. It's like, these things didn't exist, when I was in school or whatever, trying to, figure out how this all worked. It's like, maybe they did and I just didn't see it, but I don't know. But I just feel like now you can get away with a little bit more even in the corporate world. I don't know. Maybe not all companies, but I see it. There's a lot of playful stuff out there now.
I think a lot of companies now are using the change in the world to drive their businesses forward. And you can see the people who are not accepting change and who do not embrace like technology are getting left in the dust.
Sure. Absolutely. And I had another webinar earlier today, another podcast thing. And they asked me what's my biggest dislikes of my day-to-day, and it's the staying on top of technology. It is hard as again, a gig economist, it's hard because we don't have the bandwidth or resources or money to maintain like some of these bigger firms can do and stay on top of that stuff like SEO. It's like, yeah, 3 months ago I might have been good. I don't know if I am today, so it's just constantly changing, where I think that could be a roadblock for us. But at the same time, like I said with him, it's a love-hate with technology. It's like, you have to play the game. And at the same time, as frustrated as you might get over this quirk or whatever, you're still using this computer to do your work and make an income. So you can't yell at it as much as you think you can. You got to have this kind of relationship together, because we're all in this together with your day-to-day grind. And the technology is like, how many % of that now that I use it? So yeah, as much as it's a love-hate, I still have to, use it and stay on top of it. So I agree with you with that.
So let's take a rewind and tell me what MJW Careers is and who do you serve and what do you do for them?
Excellent. Well, I am the president, founder, and essentially we serve worldwide, because once I locked in that first Australian client or what have you, now I'm global. That was a nice little feather in the hat. But yeah, and I boil mine down to, I'm resume writing, career coaching, interview training. So it's those three. Outplacement for the B2B out there. But essentially just help. I really don't have a particular demographic or niche. Like, I would wish I probably should get to that point maybe down the road. I've been drumming up the idea of maybe catering more towards like the management and maybe like sales, marketing kind of business function stuff. But honestly, it's like, I enjoy getting the technologists. I enjoy I once did a NASA astronaut cover letter. So it's just like, it's fascinating to me that all the walks of life I get. So I really never want to pigeonhole myself in particular who my target audience is. So I can help anyone essentially. Only ones that scare me in your audience are the biotech people. God love you. It's such high level thinking, and I was never a really good science student. So those folks, I usually collaborate more on resumes with than maybe a typical account manager that comes my way that I could, literally I've been in that role before, so I don't really need much hand holding. Essentially though, I would say anyone seeking someone that's going to be kind of, decent at staying up on things and being able to write well and message you and position you accordingly to your targeted role. So it's kind of not brain surgery what we do as resume writers. It's not really as complicated as a lot of things, but there is a science behind some things, and there's some relevance that you need to stay on top of to make sure you're not, a bottom ending and sacrificing these people's potential incomes and livelihood because you're the one who doesn't know how to stay on top of it. So it's important what we do too. You're helping people change their life. So, and getting sometimes thousands of dollars more long-term. So it's important too. You got to kind of have that, notion when you're going into any client that this is something that could potentially set them off the rest of their life. So take it serious.
Oh, absolutely. I think writing a resume is one of the most stressful things about career changes.
It can be. I've heard that. And no one likes to talk themselves up. They say a lot of that.
No. It's even when I have to ask for people for their bios for these podcast episodes, they always tell me, this is so hard. I don't like writing about myself. Well, you did a great job. Like, this is a great bio. It is hard. It is hard. So what is a trick as a resume writer to pull that out of somebody, to get those words down onto paper?
Honestly, I enjoy using the whole pre-screening kind of questionnaire. I know, it's a mixed bag in this world or in this industry, and a lot of my colleagues are the same because when you try to transcribe someone's background over the phone, it can be a little bit more tedious and a little bit more time consuming for what you get out of it in the back end. So I like making them do a little bit more work. So I'd let my clients do the legwork because they're the ones living their life. And I guide them along in a way that's like, if you can just answer these with knee-jerk reactions, a lot of these questions, I can kind of then take what they think are their value offerings, what they think are their proficiencies or their methodologies they use or their servant leadership styles or consultative sales approaches or whatever their world is of what they've done. And I can kind of spin it into these sentences that have some relevance, aren't redundant, and show those pain point kind of, ability to address these hiring managers' pain points through a sentence saying, this is what I've done as an accomplishment. So for me, it's more now, if they can lean more heavily on their accomplishments and successes, literally, if that's the most they can really do the best work for, I can take care of the rest. And then we can work through the revisions to make sure there's nothing on there that they can't, pull off and add stuff in that maybe we forgot to add on because, now we're starting to work with this new document that they see, oh, wow, my messaging does make all this sense. Now I can kind of see this bird's eye of what might be missing. So it's a lot easier after the first draft with me and my processes to get it to where it needs to be. And essentially, if they can really just hone in, I mean, who can't think of 10 things they've done in their job that they're really proud of if they sit there for an hour to take the time to do that? Because again, this hour of really deep thinking can then translate into a piece of documentation that can then translate into a better role and more happiness and et cetera.
Just to get them to think that way, though, to get them to dig a little bit deeper and to pull out all of those. And we talk about this over in the membership community is where do you find that confidence on the days that you don't feel it? And oftentimes you can take a look at your old resume and be like, oh my God, look at all the things that I accomplished for this company and like start to feel that success all over again.
Absolutely. And that's something that people should be tracking anyway. I mean, everyone has metrics they're responsible for, whether they have to see them in person or if their manager just sees them. But everybody is responsible for productivity, performance, workflow, and all, throughput and all these things that we have, business quantifiers. And so if you're in the field, be a little observant about what you're doing and how you're accomplishing things. Don't just be laissez-faire and get through the day and, then expect at the end, how come I'm not getting paid more? It's just like, take some pride in what you're doing every day and know not only if you can sustain those numbers, but also improve them or exceed them or implement new processes or revamp, things or do change management. These are things that makes the company progress, and then they'll recognize that you're doing these things, and then maybe you'll get more bonuses or more, whatever. So you can't just be idle hands, even if you're at work. You just, it's like my old English class in college about the thinking man. It was, I forgot what writer. I don't think it was Angelou, but one of these real poignant writers had that as their basis of their book was just the thinking man versus the idle. I was kind of naturally born just a thinker, and sometimes it has its, the anxieties are more apparent in my mind than maybe someone who isn't, but those are, that's the downfall of having that thing. But at the same time, it keeps me motivated, keeps me kind of on my feet and trying to improve things and stay on top of things. And I think makes for a more well-rounded employee and better outcomes for everybody.
And it also translates to business ownership. You can easily take all of those skills, which is what I did, take all those skills and just transfer them to a different audience. I don't run large HR global projects anymore, but I help people launch their business. It's the same theory and the same methodology. I just do it to a different audience. And that's what I always like to talk about as well on the podcast is taking those skills that you have honed and you have worked so hard in obtaining and maybe you really like them. I always loved being a project manager. And so when people said, how are you creative? I can take an idea and I can walk you through step by step how to get to that final destination by all the work that I've done, all of those skills and all of those workshops that I got sent to and all of the certifications that I was forced to get. And I use them just in a different way now.
Absolutely. And that's kind of funny how as much as like, yeah, I'm the same way as you, like, we're not going back, but it's like, it is someone that you have to kind of still have the respect for, that world that kind of trained us and got us to where we can be now. Because it hadn't been you not gone through corporate, let's be honest. I mean, we might be, just fish flapping around on dry land right now going, I don't have any relation to any of this stuff. I never did anything like this, or so it's nice to have that experiential hands-on stuff, execution all those years to then, translate it in your day-to-day. So I completely agree. But
Well,
I still don't want to go back.
no, but I still feel like I can be a fish floundering on the ground. That hasn't stopped sometimes.
No, I know, I'm with you on that. I just don't want to admit it.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been out for 3.5 years, so I still learn something new every day, and I think that's the beauty of it, is that learning never stops, and the growth potential never stops. And that's something that you don't see in corporate. You can grow and grow and grow, and then you're going to hit a ceiling, and you either have to change jobs, change companies. You have to change in some way that maybe that's not what you wanted, but you always hit a ceiling in some capacity.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And even like the people that might, push forward, break ceilings and things, there are anomalies in any of that workforce, and you got to be pragmatic. You got to be logical in your thinking of what's my career trajectory. And if you're in a company that's, obviously it's apparent that there might not be any more room, then see the writing on the wall and try to get to somewhere where you're going to have that happiness, whether, like we said earlier, whether it's financial or balanced, happy, balance of life or whatever, brand image, the company, these are all factors that get out of there and go somewhere. You're not tied down anywhere. And again, as soon as the, hits the fan, sometimes they are not going to look at you and go, oh, Lauren, you know what? You did so good on that project 3 years ago. You're not going to get affected by this downsize. It's like, no, if you're depending on what they're looking at to make their decision of how you're either going to stay or go. If it's falling on financial matters and you might make too much, they'll say, okay, cut Lauren. Sorry, you did so much for us and really were a great employee, but money's money and we gotta make more of it and you're gone. So it's like, you're still, I don't want to say your number everywhere. Not all cultures are like that at companies, but tell you what, it still talks a lot. It still carries a lot of weight. So, another reason, the number thing, it drives me nuts still.
So what are some lessons that you've learned along the way? Since you've been in business for 11 years, what are some big aha moments?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say the biggest one most recently is collaboration. I was extremely like, you don't go to Levin's resumes, they're a competition, and you were just like, had this notion of, it's me versus them, right? And I'm not gonna, I'm gonna collaborate with my clients, but I refuse to help anyone in my industry. And that was something I got over. I mean, not like most recently, but in the last few years, where I said, no, it's just better to collaborate, not worry about who's getting the client, who's closing the client, but rather like making sure they're getting the best service that they should be getting. And not only that, collaborating in a sense of sharing ideas, being on top of the game, and knowing that there's other experts out there that have more to offer and that know more, that have been doing it longer, that I can learn from. And I've always been a learner, but I've never really appreciated the whole collaboration thing until, like I said, last few years, where now it's like, if I don't make the client sale, it's $200. Let them go to that person because that person is good too. And I know they would do the same for me.
That's if I can't help a coaching client, I try to always provide a resource. I don't work with product-based businesses, but I have a friend who does. I always send the product-based people over to her, or maybe a coach does a specific thing differently than I do, and that particular client really needs that other coach. Like, I always try to provide a resource, whether it's me or somewhere else.
Yeah, because it'll come back. It's if a person gets caught up on the numbers game, if they're independent, business owner, and I get it, we all got to still, feed our family, but it's like the numbers game shouldn't be the number one thinking. And I think that's like once you realize that as a, gig economist, you'll have more success, because I think it's just almost like the world kind of gives back to you then. So it's like, that is something that I try to remember every day. It's like, if you make $0 a day, it's fine, because the next day maybe you'll make, the 200 or whatever, or meet whatever quota you have for yourself. So if they can just get over the idea of take, and more of a idea of, give, a mantra, I think you have much more success for more sustained time. I was thinking in terms of, the COVID and the post-COVID world, and it'll be interesting to see how many companies really do stick to more of the idea that you are a person and less of a number. And not all of them, obviously, but I bet you there's a handful that'll come around and really value more and try to sustain top talent more, rather than just look at bottom line. I mean, I get that bottom line drives everything, but with the companies, but it'll be interesting to see if there's a company with a heart, like a tuna with a heart for Mr. Mom. You remember that scene?
No.
Oh, you got to go watch Mr. Mom. It's like she pitches a tuna with a heart. It's at the end. But just like maybe there'll be companies that change their culture a little bit because of this. But that's the whole thing. Yeah. We're in this uncertainties right now. The waters are, everything's shifting everywhere, and it's just like, I don't know what's going to be hiring in 2021, but we'll see.
What is your one piece of advice that you would offer any of our listeners who are looking to make that shift out of corporate?
Do it. Don't look back. Don't overextend yourself. Don't start buying into marketing things and spending money on this, that, and the other thing if you don't think you need it. You can do the trial and error of budgeting and expense control later on once you start honing in what you're doing. So save your money and do as much things free as possible. Go lock up a website, play the kind of the game of setting yourself up per government, financial, whatever guidelines. And trust me, there's so much information. If you just type in anything you're thinking, how can I start up my accounting side of my small business? There's an article and they'll show you some things to do. So information's not the problem. It's just a matter of collecting it and putting it in the right spots, and then not overwhelming yourself to get through it all. So take your time. Don't just walk, don't run. Do the right things where you're setting yourself up. So then once you start kind of getting the hang of it, then you can start seeing what you can do that might be a little different during your initial phases. So I would say just walk, don't run as your first step, but do it, because if you fail, then you can always just try something else or go back to corporate. Like we were saying early in the call, over planning and kind of that reluctancy, the hesitation type stuff, because you want it to be perfect right away, that is going to just stop you in your tracks and you won't go anywhere from there. So start with one thing a day towards that business, then the next day do 2 things, and then the next day do 3 things towards the business. And don't overwhelm yourself. But if you want to start your own business, work at it. Start working as much as you can and doing the right things, and find a mentor. SCORE is a great organization that helps small businesses. Find your small business center. There's SBCs in every pretty much major city. So there's people there that'll help you for free. They'll actually be mentors. So tap your network, LinkedIn, there's just so many avenues to find information and then start building your little world of your company and what you can offer, who you might want to offer it to, at what price should you offer it. Just start grinding, because then you'll start doing trial and error stuff. You'll just start correcting.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. It's been a pleasure and a lot of fun to have you on the show today. I will leave all of Matt's contact information in our show notes. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi there. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Matt. He was a lot of fun to interview and to have on the show. If you're enjoying what you're hearing on the Corporate School Dropout podcast, please leave us a rating and review. That way we can connect with more people and inspire more dropout stories. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Corporate School Dropout podcast.